Welcome to 40 Fit Radio, where we bring you science-based, common sense information regarding fitness, health, and lifestyle for the 40-plus community. I'm your host, Darren Deaton, Doctor of Physical Therapy with 28 years clinical practice experience, starting strength coach, and certified CrossFit trainer. "40 Fit Radio, real people, real fitness, real health." All right, welcome to 40 Fit Radio. I'm your host, Darren Deaton, and I have a long-term friend and college roommate, and et cetera, patient, many things, Dr. Steve Lawson. He has a doctorate in strategic leadership, and today we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence. So, Dr. Steve, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, great. So, Steve, why don't you mind if I call you Steve?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Call me Steve.
I don't really know him as Dr. Steve, guys. I know him as Steve. So, Steve, tell us a little bit about your professional background first.
Okay.
And then we'll kind of go into how we know each other. Mm-hmm. And tell us about what you're doing right now, okay?
My professional background, I was a small business owner, coached gymnastics out of college, ended up in manufacturing. From there, I actually ended up planting a church. I was a pastor for 18 years. And 3.5 years ago, I stepped down as senior pastor, began to travel full-time, training pastors and business leaders around the world. We go to areas where pastors or business leaders don't have access to education or can't afford it, and we take a team in and do some training. And that's kind of where my passion is. I also do leadership training and consulting, kind of for corporate clients or other organizations, sometimes churches. That helps pay the bills. So I do that so that I can do the other. Sure. And so that is where I kind of spend most of my time.
So your organization that does corporate training managers, people skills, interpersonal dynamics, the whole, personality evaluations. Yeah. What that is, Leadership Transformation International.
Yeah, Leadership
correct?
Transformation International. Okay. And for the corporate training part of it, I have two main seminars that I'm certified to teach. One is called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It's a one-day seminar, comes with an emotional intelligence assessment that we do follow-up coaching with. And the other one is called the Leadership Challenge, which is anywhere from half a day to a 2-day seminar, 2 days being the most robust. Also comes with a very extensive assessment that goes with it, and we do coaching, and then follow-up seminars if the organization wants to work that in.
Cool. Very cool. So let's talk about the important stuff, though, how we met and about you and me, because that's so. We
haven't quite figured that part out yet.
We were trying to figure this out earlier in this week because I'm treating Steve right now. Both Steve and I had rotator cuff repairs back in December, and so I'm treating him and I'm treating myself, and he's doing great. By the way, he's a great patient, very fit. He lifts, he CrossFits. He has a gymnastics background. That's one of the things that always drew me to Steve as a guy, was that he was just very physical, athletic. He was a hunter. And we met somewhere in college, early college.
We had a mutual friend, Mike Tanner, because you and he knew each other.
Gymnastics.
From doing gymnastics in high school.
Yeah.
And Mike and I were friends, and then you came in the picture somehow and ended up living with us.
Yeah. I think I just shacked there. No, but so your dad owned a condo, and we're in the college town we were in, and I was a roommate for a while, and then we kept in touch, and
we worked together for a while. Coached
age group gymnastics together, and then we spent a lot of time on the back of a boat, water skiing on the way to teach gymnastics. But Steve has always been one of the guys in my life that I kind of used as a spiritual mentor and a friend, and just someone I could echo ideas off of. He also has 3 daughters.
Yes, 3 girls.
Just like my 3 girls.
1 granddaughter. Who is currently the most beautiful baby in the world.
Okay, there's a little bit of human bias there.
It's research. There's no bias. It's how it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't have any grandkids yet because none of my girls are married yet, but my middle one gets married in the end of July, so I'm sure before long, within the next 2 or 3 years, we'll be having grandkids too, which is kind of hard to believe that I'm sitting here talking about the fact that I'm about to have grandkids one day, but hey, it is what it is, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why we're here on 40 Fit Radio, because this actually should be called 50 Fit Radio now, because Steve is in his 50s, I'm in my 50s. So So let's talk a little bit about, so here's the reason why I wanted to have you on the program. When you think about development, human development, you think about what we talk about mostly here is obviously fitness, but really it's fitness, health, and lifestyle of individuals over the age of 40. So when we talk about fitness, we could talk about physical fitness. We could talk about, let's just say, emotional fitness.
Yeah.
And we could talk about cognitive fitness, intellectual fitness, all these different components or aspects of human existence. And I think one of the things that I began to think about was just, I see a lot of guys and a lot of ladies in gyms, and they're trying to get fit again. They're trying to get in shape again. And a lot of people in our age range, that 40 to 50 age range. And I also wonder, are they working on their minds? Are they like doing an intellectual linear progression? Are they working on their emotions? So first of all, let's define what you think of as emotional intelligence.
Sure. Yeah, emotional intelligence. Well, the textbook is, it's a set of emotional skills that collectively establish how well we perceive, express ourselves. How do we develop and maintain relationships? How we cope with challenges, how we handle stress, how we make decisions, and how we manage all those things that we know. And that, as we talk about people going back in the gym, we have to remember that all of us we're holistic people. We bring all of ourselves with us to the gym, and all of it's going to affect how we handle whatever workout we're doing, or even whether we choose to do one or not.
Right. Well, you bet. A lot of people, I think, at our age, let's face it, if you look at Western culture, a lot of people have, I'm going to use the term, gotten out of shape,
right?
Whatever that means, but they've gotten, detrained, deconditioned, or they might even be untrained, unconditioned. Maybe they never did any training in their life. And so going in the gym, let's face it, you can be a little vulnerable,
Sure.
A sense of self-awareness, you're self-conscious about your body, especially, I think women probably more than men, but definitely men too.
Men carry their own with them. It just looks different on us.
Yeah.
We would like to deny that we even have emotions sometimes.
Yeah.
We definitely don't want to admit that our emotions control us, because as men, American men, especially Texas men, emotions equals weakness in our minds.
Yeah.
And we just don't understand really how it works. And unfortunately, that leaves a lot of men kind of stunted in their growth.
Undeveloped.
Yeah.
I used to always say it's kind of like if you look at a lot of professional sports, and if you look at individuals in professional sports, if no one's ever really taken the time to help them develop the other areas of their life, their emotional life, their intellectual life, their spiritual life, giving them other skill sets outside of sports, they can take a lot of those skill sets that they've learned in sports and hopefully use them in other areas of their life. But if no one's really taken the time to help them do that, they've spent most of their lifetime doing nothing but bouncing a ball and shooting it in a rim, doing really well at that, or throwing a football or hitting a baseball or whatever the sport is. And they never really develop those other areas.
And the problem is that when they're no longer a superstar, who are they?
Yeah, exactly. They lose their identity.
Yeah.
So emotional intelligence is it's not the same as obviously intellectual intelligence.
No.
Can we measure it? Can we measure emotional intelligence?
Yeah, sure. There's an assessment. I mean, there's a variety of assessments on emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
So it's certainly measurable. If you're ever going to do an emotional intelligence assessment, get with me or do your research, because there's a couple that are really good, and then there's several out there that just aren't very powerful.
Right.
They don't really, and they're not science-based, and they're not. The one that we use is governed by the American Psychological Association, and so it's pretty robust.
Now, is that the same thing as personality tests, like strengths and like?
No.
Are those the same things, or are those different?
No, it's different. Emotional intelligence is really going to measure how do I handle the emotional information about myself, my emotional makeup, and things like that. Now, when I talk about it, I always bring in personality type, strengths and weaknesses, successes and failures, because all those things make up who I am. And since self-awareness is such a big piece of it, then I always want to bring that in. So I kind of add to it when I do my seminar.
Yeah. So when you meet someone, do you, it's kind of funny being that I've been in the health and fitness industry for almost 30 years. This is my 29th year of practice, and being in the fitness industry for a long time. When I meet someone, I automatically kind of assess their physical stature, their physical fitness. And I hate to say it, but I do prejudge, and sometimes in a good way and sometimes in a bad way, whether I think they're quote unquote in shape or not, or if physical health and physical fitness is something that's important to them. Is that something that you think you can sense with people that are emotionally intelligent and those who are not? Is it something that you can actually sense in people? Or
I've kind of learned to pay attention to it. You develop the skills necessary for what you do in life. And as a pastor for 18 years, obviously dealing with people at their best and their worst, you learn to read in those things and to recognize those things. I think probably what has set me up to do this fairly well is not just the education and the training part of it, but I've been married for 29 years.
Yeah.
And I raised 3 girls. So, I had to become an expert in this to survive.
That's great. You slit your throat,
right,
along the way. But I would say that does help us.
Sure.
We either we either live in denial during that time and we don't ever develop, or we try to develop.
Yeah.
Or we try to do better. And become more in tune with those around us. I kind of think of it this way. When I think of emotional intelligence, I think of someone who has good impulse control. They respect others around them. They kind of have a good sense of who they are and how people see them. It's really weird when you think about self-awareness or just kind of self-image and how self-image fits in that.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll be on the beach and you'll see some lady walking down the beach in a 2-piece that has no business being in a 2-piece, and she will be strutting her stuff. And then you'll see another lady walking down the beach who has every business being in a 2-piece, according to, what we think of as a
we're offending
body.
lots of people by this conversation.
I know that. That's okay. Beautiful. We didn't say any particular body type, but she is what supposedly has a beautiful body in our culture, let's say, in Western culture, and she'll be wearing a cover over and very self-conscious about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that self-image part, or I guess like you said earlier, being self-aware.
Right.
So do you think there's some people who don't even know they're not emotionally intelligent?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
What does that look like? I mean, what would that? I mean, we might offend more people here. But,
all of us display this in one degree or another. For example, we were both married, and I ask this question a lot, and I get the same answer every time. So it's an easy one.
Sure.
You're in a fight with you're upset with your wife, or your wife's upset with you. It doesn't matter either way it works, because we both do this in my family. And I know Karen's mad at me, but she hadn't said anything. So I ask her, "Are you mad at me?" And what does she say? No.
No. Yeah.
Of course she does.
Yeah.
No, I'm not mad at you. Well, I've learned to ask the question about 15 different ways to try to get there, but still sometimes I get no. And when I finally do discover that she actually is mad at me, I'll ask her, "Why'd you say no?" Well, I shouldn't have been upset about that to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do the same thing. Well,
Sure.
that shouldn't have upset me.
Sure.
Or I decided I'm not mad about it, but really I am.
Sure.
Or I think being angry is wrong, so therefore I'm not angry.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lack of emotional intelligence.
Yeah. Because it doesn't resolve the situation.
No, it didn't help at all.
Yeah.
Where I can't I just accept that an emotion is what it is? That is information. Yes, I'm upset. Now what's right or wrong or healthy or not is, what do I do with my anger?
Sure.
And how I communicate with my wife or respond to a coworker or the TV, in a football game.
Sure.
I mean,
sure.
And so do I just accept, yes, I'm having an emotion, and an emotion is amoral.
Right.
It's what I do with it that makes the difference.
Oh, that's a good point. So until you act on it, until you act on that emotion, then it's really something that obviously you can stop before it's not stop before it starts, but you can definitely control the action or the response to the emotion that you're feeling.
I don't know how many times I've heard, I shouldn't be upset, I shouldn't be sad, I shouldn't be mad, all those things. Well, no, but you are.
Yeah.
Own it.
Yeah.
Now deal with it.
So when we talk about, earlier you and I were talking a little bit about this, about the fact that when we strength train or when we lift, we do this thing called a linear progression, which is we basically start lifting loads with barbells or whatever else we're doing, and we gradually increase over time our ability and our physical strength through resistance training and through what we call the overload principle. And we eventually get to where we're really, really strong. And there's other things that we do, like conditioning and mobility and things that help those areas of our physical fitness too. So when we think about intellectual growth too, one of my colleagues and fellow coaches, Scott Hambrick, has started a podcast, and he's also started a thing called the Intellectual Linear Progression, which is reading all the great books of the classics, basically, and to help people get a better sense of the world and society and who they are and values and humanity and all those things. So when we talk about emotional intelligence, where do we go from here then? Where can people, how does that apply to our age range? Yeah. And what can we do to develop emotional intelligence? Well,
let's just stick with the strength analogy, right? So the first thing that you're going to do if you're in a barbell linear progression is what? What are your maxes? What's the baseline?
Yeah, you're either going to do that or you're going to,
you got to start
get a
somewhere.
Slowing of the bar path, right?
Yeah. So you've got to do the initial assessment of where you're at. Now, maybe you can do that by yourself if you have enough experience, or if you've studied strength training enough, or if you read Starting Strength or whatever.
Right.
Or maybe you get a coach.
Right.
But you at least establish kind of that baseline. Where am I at?
Sure.
And then it's a constant evaluation.
Yeah, absolutely.
You learn to pay attention to yourself. You learn about what it is. Maybe you get some coaching along the way, and you begin to develop those things. So, I'm a big fan of assessments. I think it's so helpful. Do an emotional intelligence assessment, a good one. Then you know where you're at. And with a good coach or a good tool, there'll be a plan for you right there on how to develop different parts of it.
Right.
Do a personality assessment, do a strengths and weakness assessment. All those things help you understand who you are and how you're uniquely wired, and you'll begin to understand even how you got there.
Let's say someone doesn't perceive that they have a problem with human, I think we all know we've got issues with our human relationships and interpersonal relationships around us. But let's say someone says, I'm fairly well adjusted. A lot of people, they just don't think they or need to improve.
Well, you actually just made the point. The first thing you said was most people don't think they have a problem.
Right.
That's how we think about this. Well, I don't have a problem, therefore I don't need to do this.
Okay.
Let's stop thinking about it as, do I have a problem or not?
Could I improve upon it?
Think about it as, do I want to develop myself as a human?
Oh, that's a good
Do
point.
I want to grow?
Yeah,
do I want to become a better
saying.
person? Do I want to be better at my job, better in relationships?
Right.
Do I want to grow as a person?
Right.
Not, do I have a problem I got to deal with? But let's just go with that.
Do I want to relate better to people at my workplace and my marriage and my
I don't go to the gym because I'm a slug.
Right.
I go to the gym because I simply want to get stronger.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
But I've got to start with where I'm at right now first.
So it's a different perception in not saying to yourself that, I've got a problem in this area, but actually what I want to do is I want to better myself in each area of my life.
I constantly tell people, this is information. This is not an evaluation.
Right.
So if we can approach things that way, then we're much better off, because if we think of things like, well, this is going to be an evaluation, I may not want to go there because either my ego or my insecurities are going to prevent me from going.
Yeah.
But rather, if I can just gather the information about myself and then put together a development plan, I'm much better off. I've got to eventually see how strong I am before I start doing squats every other week or every other day.
Sure.
Where do I start? What's my progression?
Sure. No, I think there's a lot of corollaries there when you think of it from a strength training sense, and you think of it just from assessing your emotional health or your emotional abilities, your emotional capacities, right? And your emotional intelligence and how to develop that. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I have a client come in and let's say we're going to teach them that day the squat, the press, and the deadlift, and the bench. We're going to teach them the barbell movements that day. the first thing we do is we go through the model with them, and immediately I get a flavor for what we're going to need to work on,
Right.
how we're going to need to improve it, what are their form issues. And some of those issues may not be physical issues. They may be, that they're scared of the barbell,
Right.
or that they feel kind of vulnerable in that position. But I think in a lot of ways, this is a lot like that. I mean, you've got to first get some information about yourself, whether you think you have a problem or not.
Right.
And then from there, once you have that information, you got to figure out what you're going to do about it.
Absolutely.
So having a coach is great. So what coach in the emotional intelligence world,
Right.
who is that person? What does that person look like?
Well, that's gonna vary.
A loaded question.
It is a loaded question because it gets into the psychological realm. Just because someone's a psychologist doesn't mean that they've studied emotional intelligence
Right.
in depth.
Right.
Or someone who studied emotional intelligence doesn't necessarily make a good psychologist.
Right.
I've studied emotional intelligence. I'm terrible at counseling.
Right.
I'll talk with some people about some things. I guess as a pastor, I should be better than I am, but that's not an area of my strength.
Right.
But I understand this, and I can take somebody from an assessment and put a development plan together, but there are others that are better at then taking that stuff and doing a longer term coaching with that client. My business isn't built around coaching. My business is built around training. I'd much rather do seminars and the short term coaching that comes from the seminar than longer term. But I've got friends that are in the same industry and they built their business around executive coaching, and they'll spend weeks and months with people or whatever, or emotional intelligence coaching, and so it's a matter of finding those that do that.
So if someone were looking for someone like that and they wanted a longer term coach, they could contact you through your organization, and you could probably help them reach out and find someone in their community.
What I would do is simply connect someone with someone else. I probably wouldn't do it myself. Again, it's not my strength.
Sure. Very good. Very good. So when we think about, the master's aged individual, we were talking about this earlier about how, when you think about emotional intelligence and growing individually, I want our listening audience, I want everyone that's in our listening audience, including myself, I want to be able to expand my capacities in every area of my life, whether it be intellectually, emotionally, physically. And that just makes me have a fuller life, a better quality of life. It also makes me a more productive human overall.
Sure.
If I'm better in relationships, then I can also, I'm an outcome-driven guy, so I can get things done better too.
Right.
Working with cooperation and communication and those types of things. So with emotional intelligence and that whole concept, why do you think it's important to our age range and our group of people? We were talking about this before. We've kind of finally gotten to this point in our life where maybe we're done with not the real thing.
Right.
Yeah,
we're kind of done posing by now.
Yeah.
Or
hopefully.
We've at least made that cognitive decision that we're done posing by now.
Yeah.
So now we got to deal with all the coping mechanisms that we built over the years, all the masks that we've worn over the years, all the things that we've put out there for people that may or may not be the real us.
Sure.
And so, at our age, it's kind of like, let's rediscover who the real us is, and because we're tired.
Yeah.
We're just tired.
Yeah.
And part of it is because it's a lot of work to kind of put that on. And when you get tired of doing that, one of two things happens. Either you just become a jerk, and one of those old people who's just rude and mean, and people expect it because they're old and don't have any teeth, or something. But or you can decide, I'm tired of doing this, so I'm going to develop myself, my authentic self. I'm going to discover that. I'm going to peel away all the layers and, discover my authentic self, because it's a lot less work to put that on.
I always say people, and this is a kind of a quaint statement, but I think it's true. People either get bitter or they get better.
Yeah, sure.
One of the two.
Yeah, that's a much better way to put it than my comment, have no teeth.
Well, but it's true.
Well, yeah.
They either get bitter or they get better.
That's what you think of, the grouchy old man with no teeth, who just bitches at everybody.
Yeah. But I think, when you think about it, it's the same thing that people come into the gyms for. It's the same thing that patients come into my office for. Everybody's looking to improve whether it be a problem or an area of their life, and you get to the point to where you're just sick and tired of being sick and tired, and
Right.
you want to improve in those areas.
Yeah.
And you have to obviously be a little bit vulnerable too, to say, I'm not the expert in this area. I find that very, very intelligent people sometimes actually, and now my assessment could be wrong, this is my own self-assessment, but very, very intelligent people sometimes can have lower emotional intelligence because they're so logical, so intellectual. Does that make sense?
Sure.
You see that
Absolutely,
happening? Maybe in a management position, a guy that's really crazy smart or a woman that's really crazy smart, and they just don't get it that there are people around them that have emotions.
You're right. Yeah, and they think everybody ought to be like them, and they kind of look down on anyone who's not. Yeah. It does make a massive difference. In fact, I mean, research will bear this out, that emotional intelligence is a much better predictor of success than IQ.
Yeah.
Or cognitive intelligence.
I've read that and heard that, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, because emotional intelligence is, of course, who I am and how I develop myself, but how I treat people.
Sure.
And let's face it, we are in a people world. Very few people's jobs are so isolated that they don't have to deal with other people.
Right.
Now, they may have that, but they're going to be limited on how far they'll go in that job,
right?
How successful they'll be in it. Whereas others that you've got to develop those people skills.
I tell when in our company in our orthopedic clinics, when we're looking at candidates, doctors of PTs for jobs, and you've met a lot of my staff, a lot of the PTs that are on staff. I can train skill. Once they have a license and they're licensed to practice and they've passed their state board and they've passed an accredited, doctorate program in physical therapy, they've got the basic skill set they need to practice safe and hopefully not kill anybody in our clinics.
Sure.
And so, but I can train skill. What is harder, much harder to teach and to train is, and I always I say it this way to new candidates, new hires that are coming in, that are candidates for positions. I say, the number one thing you have to do in our company is you have to love people.
Right.
But it's much harder to teach interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence to people. And it can be taught.
It can be developed. It can be learned. Yeah.
You can teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah. It can be learned, but you just have to go at it like you would anything else.
Yeah, you have to go at it like you would strength training.
It's got to be intentional. It doesn't happen naturally.
Yeah. You think you have to, in strength training, we talk about this, is that you have to sometimes put yourself into voluntary hardship. You have to do some things that are hard.
Sure.
Not for the sake only of the outcome, but just because of the sake that the hard sometimes yields a fruit, yields something out of it that you never predicted. Do you think that's true with emotional fitness?
Well, yeah, think about it though. I mean, especially talking about people that are our age now. So your audience is going to be people that are either getting back in shape, maybe getting in shape for the first time, or just maybe they've been athletic all their lives and they're continuing in the process.
Yeah, all sorts of people.
Something happens in the 40, 50-year-old range that kind of forces us to take stock of who we are and our development and all that, because we begin to hit some things that, I've got to reevaluate some of the things that I do, because I'm going to push off the aging process as long as I possibly can.
Right.
But I want to do that intelligently.
Yeah.
And so you have, maybe you're a high school, college athlete or someone who's been fit all their lives. They begin to hit our age and they're in the gym and they're starting to realize there's some things that I probably need to stop doing.
Right.
I can't keep up with the 20-year-olds anymore. And I quit trying.
Sure.
And eventually, I'm too old to even try that. I mean, what's the point?
Yeah.
And so you have to begin to come to grips with some limitations.
Sure.
And
it doesn't identify who you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've got to be able to deal with all of that. But at the same time, then you have these other people that are coming in trying to get back in shape or in shape for the first time. They don't understand their potential.
Sure.
And they see themselves as unfit or out of shape or overweight. And they can't see their potential, and part of our job is to draw that out of them.
Right.
Both those things are self-perception issues that we've got to deal with.
Sure.
And kind of our age forces it on us. The question is, will I allow myself to learn through this?
Right.
Will I face it and go with it, because
if you become that bitter old man with no teeth.
Right.
I'm always going to use that analogy.
That's going to stick.
Could have been an old lady with no teeth.
Right.
Golly.
But when I go to the gym, I take all of me with it.
Yeah.
I take my ego, I take my insecurities.
Sure.
I take my strengths and weaknesses, I take my baggage.
Sure.
I take my hot buttons, I take my arrogance, I take all those things. And the question is, can I get to where I understand that well enough that don't let it affect me in an unhealthy way?
Sure.
That I can still face, training and linear progression, all those things, in a more realistic way, in a more healthy way.
Yeah, sure. And not letting your ego drive your gym performance or caring what other people think about. Yeah, exactly.
And can I even understand that and then manage around it? At the same time, we've got to understand this in others. I mean, you and I do physical, do train others. I mean, I do CrossFit coaching and every other person that's in the gym has all that stuff with them too. They have their strengths, weaknesses, fears, failures, insecurities, all those things. And part of our job as coaches with them is to begin to understand that so that we can better communicate with them.
Sure.
We can't treat everybody the same way.
Right.
Just like you can't program the same CrossFit WOD for everyone in the room.
Right.
You've got to adjust that for different skill levels and different age groups.
Yeah. One of the things I think about, and we've talked about this a lot in the strength community, and that is that when you make yourself do something that's really hard on a regular basis, there is more than just physical adaptation.
Right.
And one of my coaching colleagues, Matt Reynolds, who's the founder of SSOC, Starting Strength Online Coaching, and also started with Scott Hambrick, the Barbell Logic podcast. He and I were talking about this several weeks ago, about a month ago or so, at a convention we were at. And we were just talking about how making yourself do that on a regular basis physically, it actually grows you emotionally,
right?
At a level you never thought it would. And so it's funny when you walk into the gym that day, and you're a 55-year-old guy or lady, and you got to squat a weight that day that maybe used to represent your 1 rep max,
right?
And now you're doing it for fives, 3 sets of 5, and you really feel like the weight's going to crush you. But you do everything you're supposed to do. You walk in there and you do it anyway. And whether you succeed or you failed, you succeeded,
right?
Because you did it. You gave it your best that day, and you made yourself be disciplined to show up at the gym and do the work. Basically, there's a lot of value in that.
Sure.
And there's a lot of self growth, I think, emotionally in that area if you'll let it. My best friend trains with me, Troy. You know Troy.
Yeah.
You've known him for years, and he's a real laid back guy, and he's in his 50s, and he was saying one day he was getting ready to lift a weight in a squat that he hadn't ever lifted before. And he said, man, this is hard. He said, I've been thinking about this lift all day long. It's really hard. It challenges me, physically, emotionally. He said, and it's made me a stronger. And he didn't just mean stronger as in physical strength. He meant just a stronger person,
Right.
And that's what I love about physical fitness. But I see that also being able to assess and develop these other aspects of our life,
right?
Like emotional intelligence, emotional health, and fitness, that it has value.
Sure,
and it has
absolutely
significant value.
Yeah, it's amazing how much of that comes out. I mean, I'm in the middle of a gymnastics seminar. We're doing 4 weeks of some extra gymnastics training at the CrossFit box where I volunteer, and so we've got 8 people that are doing this, and it's fun to work with adults doing gymnastics, since you and I taught children.
Sure.
Adults freak out if they've never done it before.
Yeah, being upside down
or rotating, so handstands and forward rolls.
Sure.
And it just freaks them out sometimes. I mean, and so I've got to manage those fears.
Sure.
I've got several ladies that, they want to get their handstand, but they're so afraid of being upside down. Will I be able to support myself? Am I going to fall on my head? Am I going to do whatever? And so part of what I do for them is I validate that emotion they're feeling.
Right.
Yeah, you're afraid.
Yeah.
Let's own it, and now let's process it.
Right.
So I break it down. Here's what I want you to do. All I want you to do is lunge forward, touch the floor, and stand back up again.
Right.
That's all I want. That's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Really? Yes. And so they'll do that, and I'll just push it forward.
Yeah, you break it into scaling and transitional movements. Yeah.
Touch the floor.
Yeah.
Here's success. Kick one leg in the air.
Right.
And, 1 or 2 days later, they're upside down. Now maybe I helped them get there.
Right. Sure.
But instead of tears running down their face because they're scared, which I've had, tears are running down their face because they're so excited and happy because they did it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a matter of can I manage that emotion? And take them through that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great example of how sometimes our fear. I always use the phrase, false expectations appearing real. We in our mind we've kind of prejudged everything bad that's going to happen, right? Yeah. Whether it be under a barbell or in gymnastics or in an endurance sport or whatever it is, or any area of our life. And I think having enough emotional intelligence to realize that we've got to, like you said, I love that statement you use, own that.
Right.
But then learn how to harness that and say, okay, how do I react from here? Because you said something earlier that any emotion is amoral in itself.
Yeah.
And so how we react to it is really the most important thing.
Oh, yeah, because society, we've taken certain emotions and we've made them negative. I mean, if something's that you're afraid of, well, I'm afraid, therefore I'm weak.
Right.
Therefore I'm less than.
Fear can be a great thing.
Yeah, whereas, no, it is what it is.
Right.
The head coach at our box is a Marine. And he talks about it all the time. Yeah, being in a hole, surrounded by the enemy, outmanned, outgunned. Yeah, scared to death.
Sure.
But we're going to go for it anyway. Why? Because I'm a Marine.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. And with our athletes, it's the same thing. Yeah, it is what. Don't feel bad because you're afraid.
Sure.
Let's just. What are we going to do with it?
Sure.
Yeah, it may limit us for today. I don't want to freak somebody out. But I want to help them go forward with it.
But that's growing them. That's growing them emotionally.
Oh gosh, yes.
Them emotionally.
Yeah, because
a simple thing like that.
Well, just like you said, when they've dealt with their fear in the gym, they're going to be even better equipped to deal with another fear outside the gym.
Yeah, I used to tell people all the time, once you start quitting in something in life, you'll quit in everything in life. And quitting doesn't mean that you don't stop something eventually and try something new, but it means, I used to always tell our girls when we were raising them, you see it through.
Right.
You see it through. If you've started soccer or some sport, and you want to quit, well, we're going to see it through the season. And then when you're done through the season, if you don't want to play soccer anymore, that's fine.
Right.
But we're going to see it through. And I think being able to develop those habits in our physical and emotional life or whatever, your spiritual life, it's good because those habits translate from compartment to compartment to compartment of our lives, the different areas in our life.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And we don't compartmentalize near as well as we think we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a spillover. It's going to be.
It's kind of like mixing the food on the plate.
Right.
We try to keep
it's going to get mixed when it's in your gut. So,
go ahead and mix it now.
Right.
So let's talk, then kind of talk about this a little bit. If someone wants to develop their emotional intelligence, do you have any books or anything that you read or any resources that you find to be really helpful ones?
Well, the top 3 books on emotional intelligence, well, let's see. The most popular is by Daniel Goleman. He's probably the most popular writer on emotional intelligence. His book, Emotional Intelligence, is probably the standard today. He's done the most work currently from a science-based standpoint.
Sure.
So he's going to get into what your brain is doing, during different emotions and what he calls it emotional hijacking, which anyone who's raised girls knows what that looks like.
Sure.
But all of us deal with that, and it looks different for us. Anybody loses their temper just got emotionally hijacked.
Right.
Anyway, he goes into the science behind it, the brain science and all those things, as well as the psychology with it. But his book is extremely good. Just because it goes into that depth doesn't mean that someone who doesn't understand that stuff won't like it.
A layperson can read it.
They're still going to like it. They're still going to get something out of it.
Sure.
Stephen Stein and Howard Book wrote a book called The EQ Edge. It's got a bit more practical approach. And that book, one reason I like that one is it's laid out in such a way that it's like, this is what you do. If you want to, it lays out each kind of component and subcomponent of emotional intelligence, and then gives you some step-by-step things. If you want to grow in this, do these things, and so that's a great resource for that type of development for someone who wants just to approach this on their own. And now both Goldman and Stein, have got assessments that go with their approach to emotional intelligence. Those are the two best that are out there. There are some others that I'm just not as big a fan.
Yeah, sure.
And so that's kind of the difference between those two. I wrote one at part of my doctorate from a more Christian standpoint, to combine emotional intelligence with our faith in God and what God does in our lives. It's called Giant Killers. So
I've read the book.
If you want to read my book,
it's a very good book.
Of course, I think it's good.
Very good book.
So at least it was a whole lot of work.
Yeah.
So if you want something that's from a more religious base or a Christian base, then mine takes that approach.
Sure. No, I think that obviously, I've always thought that I was fairly good with people, that I had pretty good interpersonal dynamics, pretty good read of people. But, I also realized that guy usually is the guy that needs to read that book the most.
Yeah.
The guy who thinks, I got this down, man.
Right.
He's probably the guy that needs to be laying on the couch.
Yeah.
But I think that those are good resources for our listeners, and it helps people that want to improve this area of their life.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would probably say, hey, I don't have any, like you said earlier, I don't have any problems. There's nothing really going on in my life that's bad. But if you want to grow as a human and you want to grow in all areas, then it's important for us to reach into these areas of physical fitness, emotional fitness, intellectual fitness, and grow, as a holistic person,
right?
Like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, one of my favorite authors and speakers says, "The better you get, the better you better get."
Yeah,
and so great. That I remember that a lot, thinking, okay, I should never really think I've arrived anywhere. That there's always room for improvement. There's always room for growth. And I need to keep that attitude of a learner and the humility that I'm going to need to continue in that.
Yeah,
because there's always more.
Yeah, I think that once you think you've arrived in any field of study or area of your life, then you probably need to get back to the books,
right?
Or see a coach.
Yeah. Like I tell every married couple, you probably ought to go to counseling.
Yeah,
and that's just kind of my thing. Every married couple ought to just plan. Every 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Go to counseling.
Ooh, don't say that too loud.
Yeah, because most likely there's some things that you could improve on.
Sure.
That you're missing somewhere, and having some outside perspective probably wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, that gives you a neutral party that's an unbiased party to make an assessment of what they're hearing you and your spouse say.
And if you do that as part of growth, it may help prevent you going to counseling because of crisis. Sure.
No, great point.
So
I think as a people, sometimes we're not real good at wanting to do things preventatively.
Right.
We don't see it in our medicine much. We don't see it in, a lot of people don't go to the gym till they perceive there's a problem,
right,
or there's a specific need. It's that susceptibility to change, the change behavior models. And so, but I think that what your point's a very good one, and that is work on your emotional intelligence. Because there is no problem, man.
Right.
Just continue to improve in these other areas of our life. So, Steve, if people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Probably just my website, leadershiptransformation.net.
Okay.
You can go there and fill out a contact form. There's contact form there.
Okay, great. Because some of the services that you provide might be able to be provided to corporate entities, individuals.
Yeah. And on that website, I've got the corporate seminars that I do. I also have descriptions of the pastor training, international work that I do for people that are interested in that.
Okay.
Also have a resource page that's going to have a lot of this information on it, books, to read.
Excellent.
So whether it's emotional intelligence or leadership or other subjects.
Okay. Well, I think about this, and I think about all the lifters and just clients that I've had over the years that have come into gyms and our physical therapy clinics and in practice life, and just, pretty quickly you get a flavor for the person that you're working with. You can tell the unteachable.
Right.
You can tell the moderately teachable, and you can tell the teachable,
right,
very teachable. And you can tell the individual that's wearing something on his, he's got a chip on his shoulder, or she does.
Trying to prove something.
Yeah. Or the individual who is basically very low sense of self. There's a lot of different personality traits that you can recognize very quickly.
Right.
Just like you can see physical strength in someone when they walk in. I think when you've studied people for as long as you and I have in our chosen professions, you can see their emotions.
Sure, yeah. Am I compensating? Am I doing? And all those things affect us in the gym.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of them do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, man, this has been a great podcast, and thanks for being here, Dr.
Thank
Steve.
you. I appreciate it.
And so I'll vouch for him. He's an incredible person, a great guy, a great leader, and is very good in these areas. And so if you want to reach out to Steve, you can reach out through his website. Also for 40Fit, if you would like to get a hold of us, you can go to 40fit.com and reach out to us there, or info@40fit.com is our email. You can go to our Instagram at 40Fit Radio, and you can also reach out to us on Facebook at the 40Fit Masters Community Group that's on Facebook. But it's glad to have you here, Steve, today.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining 40Fit Radio.